So, good morning. My name is Erica Hen. I am the Director of Elementary Programs for Junior Achievement of the Palm Beaches and Treasure Coast. And I am so excited to be here with all of you today as we welcome Evelyn Hopkins, our Hispanic Heritage Career Speaker. So, Evelyn, say good morning to everybody.
Hi, good morning.
All right. So now I'll go ahead and I will pull up your presentation, but maybe you want to start off with just telling us a little bit about what you wanted to be when you were a child.
Can I know how many classes are on and what their grades are? So I have a third grade class with Miss Carr. Any other classes joined?
We have a couple of other ones that
Okay,
don't have their image up, so it's hard to tell at this
perfect.
time.
Okay, great. So
Hmm.
if you want to start the PowerPoint.
Yep. Okay.
Great. So good morning, boys and girls. My name is Evelyn Torres Hopkins, and I grew up in Miami. My parents are from Cuba. And I learned to speak English once I got to kindergarten. I had never spoken English before I went to school. And even now that I'm all grown up, my parents only speak Spanish. So I'm sure that some of you only have parents that speak Spanish. So we have a lot in common. When I grew up, I wanted to be an astronaut. So by a show of hands, do a lot of you want to be astronauts? Excellent. So then I figured out that I didn't like to be up high on top of things. I'm kind of afraid of heights. So I figured it wasn't a very good idea for me to become an astronaut because I probably would be afraid to stand on the moon. So I decided instead, next slide, that I would become a lawyer. Do any of you know what a lawyer is? You can share it with your teacher now. And I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to help people and businesses. And a lot of times people think that lawyers only help people like mom and dad and grandparents and aunt and uncles, but lawyers also help businesses. And a business is anything that a commerce that you can go and buy stuff from, like McDonald's or Disney World or Publix or Winn-Dixie, where you get your food. And all these companies have lawyers as well, and it helps them stay within the law. Next slide. So the business I work for is really, really cool. It's right here in Palm Beach County where you all live, and it makes sugar. So if any of you know where sugar comes from, make sure to tell your teacher where sugar comes from. That's right, sugar comes from sugarcane. And the sugarcane is grown right, like not too far from where you're all sitting right now. It's grown in the western part of Palm Beach County. So if any classes out there are from Pahokee or Belle Glade or South Bay, you know and you've seen sugarcane right close to your house. And this is a very wonderful plant because it has a lot of water in it, and we can refine it and make sugar. And guess where the sugar goes into? It goes into your candy bars, like Hershey Kisses and Snickers. It goes into making food like bread, crackers, cookies, your cereal. I'm sure you've seen your parents put it in their coffee or cafecito or their tea. You can also make cakes with it. But one thing that you probably didn't know about sugar is that it's also used to make medicine. I bet you all didn't know that, right? So sugar is used to make medicine. It's a very important ingredient for medicine, especially when you make the little tablets. Next slide. So the hardest part about being a lawyer, does anybody know what that would be? Any ideas? It's a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading, lots and lots of reading. And I don't know that I really liked reading when I was in your grade, but I learned to love it because every time I read something, I learn something new. And just like you're in your classroom and you're going to learn new stuff today and tomorrow, when I come to work, I learn new things every day. And that's the best part of my job because I don't get bored. So another great part about being a lawyer is that you get to solve problems. You're a little bit of a detective in a way because people tell you what is wrong and then you can help them. So make sure that once you finish this presentation today, you give your teachers examples of what kind of problems the lawyers can solve. Because maybe half of you or more than half of your classmates will grow up to be lawyers, and you will do reading when your person comes to you and tells you they have a problem, and then you can solve their problems, which is really, really cool. Next slide. So before I go into talking about examples of being a lawyer, I wanted to let you know that the best way to find your career is to figure out what you love to do. And then you can turn that into your career. For example, if you love science and math, you can be an engineer. And engineers can build lots and lots of things. They can build computers, they can build bridges, they can build buildings. If you like reading, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher. There's lots of things out there to do for each of you boys and girls to learn to do and become a professional in that area. But the important thing is that you find something that you love to do, because what happens then is that your job is fun. My job is fun. I like to come to work and do my job because every day I learn something new, which is so awesome. So now we're going to turn into what I like to call case studies. And you all are going to help me figure out how to help the client. Is everybody ready? Excellent. So you've all heard of the story of the three little pigs, right? So I am going to represent the wolf, and the boys and girls are going to represent the pigs. What I mean by this is that you're going to be the lawyers for the pigs. And we may not get all the answers now, but when we hang up later today or maybe tomorrow, you and your classroom and your teacher can discuss this a lot more. And you maybe divide into half, and half of you can represent the pig and half of you can represent the wolf. And you can figure out who did what wrong, and it'll show you how to think of things differently. So let's start with the story of the three little pigs, and we're going to call this the case of the three little pigs. And I want everyone to pretend that you're not sitting in your classroom, but you're sitting in a courtroom, and that there's a judge. And on one side, there's Mr. Wolf. And on the other side, how many pigs would be sitting there? There would be one pig, because remember, he huffed and puffed and he blew down the straw house, and then he munched on one little piggy. And then the second time, he huffed and puffed and destroyed the stick house, and he munched on the other little piggy. So we will have Mr. Wolf and Mr. Pig in the courtroom. And Mr. Wolf is saying, the facts are not like they seem. I know that everybody knows the story of the three little pigs, and everybody thinks I'm mean and bad because I huffed and puffed and I blew away their houses. But really what happened is they were in my land and they built their houses in my land, and they took my sticks and they took my straw to build their houses when they weren't supposed to be there, because that's my land and I was going to build my own house there. And as I was trying to tell him to leave, all I could do was blow, because as a wolf, that's the only thing I could do. And it happened that it destroyed their house, and I did not eat the piggies. They just got caught up in the sticks and in the straw, and they blew away. But I've not seen the piggies. I didn't eat the piggies. For all I know, the piggies are out in another state living their lives. And I think it was really mean that when I was trying to get into the brick house, the last piggy that was left there tried to boil me. How can they do this to me, right? So the judge looks at Mr. Wolf and says, okay, Mr. Wolf, thank you for telling me your side. Now, Mr. Piggy, can you please tell me your side? And Mr. Piggy thinks, and he says, well, all we were trying to do was get a house. And we were in the forest, and we saw some straw, and we built a house. And this very mean wolf came, and he blew us away, and he ate my brother. And so we moved, and we built another house of stick. And the same wolf came, and he wouldn't leave us alone. And he blew us away, and he ate my other brother. So I had no choice but to build a brick house and prepare myself in case he would come back. So I put a big kettle of boiling water under the chimney so that if he came in, he would fall there and I could stay living there. So now the judge has to decide, well, who is right in this story? Is it the three little pigs that were just trying to build their homes? Or is it the wolf who had a reason for doing that? And that's the kind of stuff I want you all to think about today. And I want you to discuss it with your teacher, because most stories and most cases that lawyers are presented with have two sides to the story. And the judge sometimes, and sometimes the jury, has to decide who is right. And they will ask them questions to try to figure out if what they're saying is true, or what they're saying is maybe their impression of the truth, but it's not really the truth. And then it's the judge's job to come up with a decision as to who was right. So think about this, and I want half of you later on to pretend that you're defending the pig, and then half of you to defend the wolf, and discuss who was right and who was wrong. Or maybe they were both wrong, or maybe they were both right. So there's lots of options and lots of things that can come up from this. Okay, does everybody understand the instructions? Excellent. Are there any questions from the classroom?
I don't know if the class has read the true story of the Three Little Pigs, but it follows the same thought process behind it. It's about perspective, isn't it? And as a lawyer, I know that it's your job to help the judge see the perspectives and then make a ruling from there. So I don't know if the class has read that book before, but what a great activity to have some of the class be the pigs and some of the class represent the wolves and talk about why they are right or wrong in their actions.
Exactly. And it helps you think through, even when you have problems with your friends or your brothers and sisters, it helps you understand maybe where they're coming from. And then you can talk about, well, I didn't really mean to do that. This is what I was thinking. And it helps you figure out what to say and how to act with your friends. So if there's no more questions, I want to go to the other case. And this is the case of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Are you guys familiar with this one? Excellent. I could see a lot of thumbs up. So we know that Goldilocks was walking around, and she got tired and went inside the bear's house. And then she got hungry, and she tasted the porridge. And then she was sleepy, and she tested the beds and fell asleep. And then the family of bears came back from their shopping and opened the door, and they found that somebody had tasted their food and eaten the little bear's porridge, and somebody had slept in their beds. And oh my goodness, they found her sleeping in the bed. So just like the Three Little Pigs story, I like for half the class to represent the bears and half the class to represent Goldilocks. And Goldilocks didn't mean to go into somebody's house, but she kind of did. So I want you to think about if the bears can say, Mr. Judge, this little girl that I didn't know came into my house and we found her sleeping in our bed. Oh my goodness, we weren't expecting that. And Goldilocks is going to say, well, Mr. Judge, I didn't mean anything by that. I was just maybe lost and scared, and I saw a house and I figured I would go into it. And so the judge will have to decide if Goldilocks meant to do something wrong or not. And that's a really important part of the law, is whether you intend or if you mean to do something wrong. Sometimes we do something to our friends and it just happens as an accident. We didn't mean to maybe break their pencil or drop their book, but we do, and we still have to say we're sorry. But in the court, the judge is going to look into what the person meant to do, and that's called your state of mind. You have to figure out whether the person did it on purpose or if it was just an accident. So, any questions from this?
Go ahead.
No. Yes. No. Okay, Nathan has one.
I think the teachers very often have to act as the judge, right?
Yes.
There's a little disagreement within the classroom. The students will come to the teacher and one person gets to speak their side and the other person gets to speak their side. And then the teacher has to make a decision about, who was in the wrong there. And really, what was the intent? Was it an accident?
Exactly.
Did you mean to do that?
Yeah. And even at home with like brothers and sisters or cousins or neighbors, sometimes the parent has to play the judge and say, okay, well, why don't you let them play with your toy? And you say, well, because it's my toy. And so the parent has to serve as the judge. So I am open for questions if anybody has questions.
Ms. Carr's class, do you want to come off mute and ask a question?
Any questions? Okay, Chikai, go ahead.
Why does two of the pigs get killed?
Well, we don't know that they get killed, and that's the point. They just weren't in the rest of the story. They could have been blown away with the straws and the sticks.
But they're not supposed to get killed.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
But that's
Okay. I also have some questions that were sent in to me, Ms. Hopkins. So if you don't mind,
Yes.
the girls want to know a little bit about your family and your culture and where you went to school. Could you maybe speak to that?
Sure. So I grew up in Miami, and my parents are Cuban. Like I said, they didn't speak Spanish as I was growing up. And because I grew up in Miami, there was a lot of people of my culture, of the Cuban culture. And I went to school in Miami, but then I went to college in Chicago. And Chicago is in the state of Illinois. And I became a lawyer there. And there was a little different for me because I had never been in the cold and I had never been so far away from my parents and my family. And then I came back to Miami to be with them. And then I got married and had a baby and moved to West Palm Beach. And my baby now is 23 years old. He's not a baby anymore. And he lives in Seattle.
Awesome. Very good. So a lot of times when we speak about culture and Latino culture, we think about food. What is your favorite food from your culture?
So we eat our favorite food. And if anybody eats this too, raise your hand so I can see you. We eat arroz, frijoles negros, y lechón. Yeah, I see many hands up. We also like to eat croquetas. Does anybody like croquetas?
what?
Croquetas.
Yeah.
And pasteles.
Oh,
yeah, Fiona.
Yeah. And how many of you have café con leche for breakfast?
Oh,
Yeah, there you go. So those are a lot of the different foods we eat, and my favorite one are the empanadas. I love empanadas and churros. That's so good.
Absolutely. You're certainly making me hungry. So thank you for that. So you clearly have a very important job and you're very, very busy. But when it comes time to relax, what do you like to do for fun?
I like to listen to music. I really, really like music, and I love to cook. And I like to play with my little dog. Who wants to see my dog? Okay, so his name is Oliver, and I'm going to move the camera. Hey, Oliver. See him?
Oh,
So he's my little doggy, and so we like to go for walks. I also like to make soap, which is a lot of fun. And you can use that as maybe as a science experiment with your family. You can make some soap. So I like to do stuff that I can use, like the food, or I like to take my dog for a walk so I can get exercise. And I like to make soap so I can use it when I take showers. So it's pretty cool.
excellent. We're going to wrap it up here in just a couple of minutes, but I do have another question for you. You speak about your family and about coming to Miami, and we love all of that. What are some ways that you continue to honor and celebrate your Hispanic heritage?
Oh my goodness. I love speaking Spanish. And boys and girls, if you hear me speaking, you're going to be able to notice that I have a really heavy accent in Spanish. And I love my accent because I am so proud to be Latina. And I see lots of boys and girls out there that are Latina and Latinos. You want to raise your hands? And I love that I can, speak Spanish to my parents. And I love that sometimes I take my mom and dad to the doctor, and there's another, another lady there that doesn't speak English, and I can help her translate. And I like for all of you to help other people translate if they don't know their language, because it's so important for them to be able to speak and communicate with other people. So I love doing that. I also read a lot of books in Spanish. And if you know, there's the Three Little Pigs story in Spanish. So maybe you all can find that book in the library and read that in Spanish. It's really important to love where you come from and to honor where you come from and to learn as much as you can from your grandparents and your parents, because one day you're all going to be grown up, and then you'll have to pass on your culture to the rest of your family and your neighbors and your community.
Absolutely. So, in a district with 40% of our student population being Hispanic, it is so important that we have speakers like you. And we just wanted to give you a huge thank you. So boys and girls that are out there, can you unmute and give a huge thank you to Ms. Hopkins? There
it is.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you, boys and girls. It was so much fun to talk with you this morning. And I hope that you all take some time today and think about what we talked about. And I hope that you all grow up to be very successful lawyers and are very proud of your heritage and enjoy some arroz con frijoles tonight.
That sounds wonderful. Happy New Year to you. We thank you as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.